I'm Riley Foster, 40 female. I live in a modest two-bedroom condo that I worked very hard to afford, managing complex tech projects by day and trying to find a quiet moment for myself by night. This story is about how my quiet life was shattered by the two people I should have been able to trust the most, my own siblings, and how I was pushed to the absolute brink over the care of the one person we were all supposed to protect, our mother. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. Our family was never the picture-perfect type you see in commercials, but we were solid, or so I thought. There was Ethan, my older brother, 4 years my senior. He always had a flair for the dramatic, a need to be the biggest fish in any pond. Then there was Sophia, 5 years my junior, who floated through life with an artistic grace that often disguised a steely determination to get her way. I was the one in the middle, the planner, the mediator, the one who made sure the bills got paid and the holidays were organized. It was a role I never asked for, but one I accepted. Our roles became critically important the day our mother, Helen, received her diagnosis. Alzheimer's. It was a cruel, slow-moving thief, and we watched it steal bits of our vibrant, sharp-witted mother day by day. For the first few years, we managed her care at home. We set up a rotating schedule, hired in-home help, and pooled our resources. It was difficult, but we were a team. The vow was unspoken but deeply understood. We would do whatever it took to ensure Mom was safe, comfortable, and cared for with dignity. But the disease progressed. Her moments of lucidity grew shorter, and her confusion sometimes led to wandering. After a terrifying incident where a neighbor found her 2 blocks from home in the middle of a winter night, we had to face a reality we'd been dreading. She needed professional, 24-hour care. We found Oakwood Meadows, a wonderful facility with a dedicated memory care unit. It was clean, the staff were kind, and it had a beautiful garden where Mom could sit. It was also expensive. Crushingly so. The 3 of us sat around my dining room table, the glossy brochure and a terrifying cost sheet spread between us. Ethan, ever the big shot real estate developer, puffed out his chest. "Don't worry about the money," he'd declared, waving a dismissive hand. "We'll split it 3 ways. It's for Mom, we make it work, period." Sophia, whose online boutique was apparently doing wonders, nodded in agreement, her designer handbag sitting on the chair beside her. "Absolutely. Whatever Mom needs. My business is finally taking off, so my share won't be a problem." I, the project manager, had already run the numbers. My salary was good, but this was a huge commitment. Seeing their confidence, however, I felt a wave of relief. We were in this together. We drafted a simple agreement right there at the table. We'd each set up an automatic transfer for our third of the monthly cost into a joint account I would manage solely for Mom's expenses. We all signed it. It wasn't a legally binding contract drafted by a lawyer, just a signed piece of paper between siblings, but to me, it felt as strong as steel. It was a promise, a shared vow. For the first year, it worked perfectly. The money appeared in the account like clockwork on the 1st of every month. I paid the bill to Oakwood Meadows. We visited Mom, though I noticed my visits were becoming more frequent than theirs. I'd find her sitting in the garden, and I'd tell her about my work, about the silly things my cat did, and sometimes, for a fleeting moment, I'd see a flicker of the old her in her eyes. During those visits, I often saw Mr. Evans, the director of care. He was a kind, professional man who always had time for a quick chat, telling me how Mom had enjoyed the music therapy session or had eaten a good lunch. He made a difficult situation feel more manageable. Ethan would visit occasionally, always in a rush, dressed in a sharp suit, smelling of expensive cologne. He'd kiss Mom's forehead, tell her she was looking great, and then spend 20 minutes in the hallway on his phone, talking about zoning permits and closing deals. Sophia's visits were even rarer. When she did come, it was a content creation opportunity. She'd post a heavily filtered selfie with Mom, captioned with a sentimental paragraph about family and memory, usually tagged with family first. The post would get hundreds of likes from her followers, who had no idea she hadn't seen her mother in 2 months. I let it slide. They were busy, they had their own lives, and most importantly, they were paying their share. The vow was being honored, and that's what mattered. Mom was safe. That was the foundation of our entire arrangement. As long as the money was there, I could handle the rest. I could handle the lonely visits, the difficult conversations with the nurses, the gut-wrenching pain of watching my mother forget my name. I could handle it all because I wasn't doing it alone. The financial weight was shared, a testament to our family's bond. It was a bond I believed was unbreakable, forged in childhood and solidified by our shared love for our mother. I had no idea how quickly that steel-strong promise was about to rust and crumble into dust. The first crack appeared not with a bang, but with a simple, infuriating text message. The first payment to be missed was from Ethan. It was the second day of the month, and his third of the funds hadn't appeared in the joint account. I wasn't immediately alarmed. Technical glitches happen. I sent him a casual text. "Hey, just a heads up, your transfer for Mom's care hasn't come through yet. All good." His reply came hours later. "Cash flow issue. A big deal got delayed. I'm a little tight this month. Can you cover me? I'll get you back in a couple of weeks tops." I hesitated. A little tight wasn't a phrase I associated with Ethan. Just the week before, he'd posted photos on social media of the brand new luxury SUV he'd bought for his wife as an anniversary gift. But he was my brother, and he said he'd pay me back. "Okay," I texted back. "Just let me know when. The bill is due on the 5th. I transferred his share from my personal savings into the joint account and paid the invoice. 2 weeks went by, then 3. I sent a gentle reminder. He replied, "Next week, promise." Next week never came. The following month, the same thing happened. This time, his excuse was different. "Having trouble with a contractor. Tied up all my liquid assets. I'm good for it, Riley, you know I am. Just need a little more time." This time, I had to cover him again, but the drain on my savings was starting to sting. I had my own mortgage, my own bills, and I was trying to build a nest egg for my own future. Then, the month after that, Sophia's payment didn't arrive. My heart sank. I called her, my voice already tight with anxiety. "Oh my gosh, Riley, I'm so sorry," she gushed, her voice sounding breathless and frantic. "Things have been absolutely insane. I had to make this huge inventory purchase for the boutique, a new fall line. It's going to be huge, and it completely wiped me out. Can you spot me this month? I'll pay you back as soon as the collection drops." I scrolled through her social media feed while she was talking. The insane week she was having apparently included a weekend spa retreat with her friends and a post showcasing a new designer watch she'd treated herself to. My stomach churned. "Sophia, this is a lot of money. I covered Ethan the last 2 months, and he still hasn't paid me back." "Ethan's being a jerk," she said, feigning surprise. That's so typical. Look, I'm not him. I will 100% pay you back. You know I'm good for it." What could I do? Let the bill go unpaid? The alternative was unthinkable, so I did it again. I drained more of my savings to cover both of their shares. The joint account, once a symbol of our shared responsibility, was now just an empty vessel that I alone was filling. The vow we made around my dining table felt like a distant, naive memory. This became the new normal. Every month I would have to chase them. Ethan stopped giving elaborate excuses and switched to short, dismissive texts. "Can't this month," or "get it to you when I can." He never did. Sophia, on the other hand, became a master of theatrical financial woes. One month it was an unexpected tax bill. The next, her web server had crashed and needed a costly overhaul. Yet, her online life portrayed nothing but success and luxury. She posted about a trip to Italy to source artisanal leather goods for her boutique. She hosted a lavish party for her boutique's anniversary, complete with a champagne fountain. I tried to confront them. I called a sibling meeting, insisting we talk in person. Ethan showed up late and spent half the time scrolling through his phone. Sophia acted wounded, as if my concern for my dwindling life savings was a personal attack on her integrity. "I don't understand why you're stressing so much, Riley," Ethan said, not even looking up from his screen. "You're the one with the stable corporate job and no kids. You can handle it for a bit. My business is all about risk and investment. You wouldn't understand. I have a mortgage, Ethan. I have a life. I shot back, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and hurt. This isn't for a bit. It's been 5 months, and neither of you has paid a single cent. Don't lump me in with him, Sophia interjected, her eyes welling up with crocodile tears. I'm trying my best. My business is my dream, and sometimes it takes everything I have. You know how much I love Mom. It's horrible to suggest I'm not doing my part. She then posted a picture from her car after the meeting, a sad-eyed selfie with a caption about how family drama is so draining, and how she was practicing self-care. I was trapped. Their lives, at least on the surface, were getting fuller. Ethan was building a new custom home in a gated community. Sophia was being featured in local lifestyle blogs as a rising entrepreneur. Meanwhile, I was canceling my vacation plans, cutting back on groceries, and losing sleep every night, staring at my bank account, which was shrinking at an alarming rate. The weight of the vow had shifted entirely onto my shoulders, and it was crushing me. They had their excuses, their justifications, and their picture-perfect lives to maintain. I only had the ever-growing bills and the terrifying reality that if I stopped paying, our mother would lose her home. And the breaking point was coming faster than I could have ever imagined. The next 6 months were a slow, agonizing bleed. I had completely exhausted my liquid savings. To keep up with the payments for Oakwood Meadows, I had to start making difficult choices. First, I sold some stocks I had been holding for my retirement. It felt like setting a piece of my future on fire to keep the present from freezing over. Then, I had to take out a personal loan, the high interest rate a constant, humming reminder of my predicament. Every time I made one of these sacrifices, I would try to reason with Ethan and Sophia. I sent them spreadsheets. I sent them copies of my depleted bank statements. I showed them the loan agreement. I begged. I pleaded. I reasoned. Nothing worked. Their excuses became a familiar, infuriating chorus. Ethan's big deal was always just about to close. Sophia's boutique was always on the verge of a massive breakthrough. They seemed to exist in a reality completely separate from mine, a world where their promises had no consequences. They were insulated from the stress by my actions. As long as I kept finding a way to pay, the problem wasn't real to them. Their mother was safe, her care was being handled, so what was the issue? My financial ruin was an abstract concept, a background noise they could easily tune out. I stopped telling them about Mom's condition. The small updates, how she had a good day and recognized an old song, or how she had a bad day and was agitated and confused, used to be something I shared with them. But now, it felt like I was giving them a piece of something they no longer deserved. My weekly visits to Oakwood Meadows became my solitary refuge and my solitary burden. I would sit with Mom in the garden, holding her hand, its skin as soft and thin as paper. She wouldn't know who I was, but sometimes she would smile, a vague, sweet expression that both broke my heart and gave me the strength to go on. She had a peaceful week, Mr. Evans told me during one visit, his expression gentle. She really seems to enjoy the new sensory room. He paused, looking at me with a concerned gaze. Are you all right, Riley? You look exhausted. I nearly broke down right there in the hallway. I wanted to tell him everything, about my leech-like siblings, the loan, the sleepless nights, but I was too ashamed. I felt like a failure, as if their irresponsibility was a reflection on me, so I just nodded and forced a weak smile. Just a busy time at work. Thanks for asking, Mr. Evans. The breaking point arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. It was a gray, drizzly day that perfectly matched my mood. I came home from work, feeling the familiar weight of anxiety settle on my shoulders. As I sorted through the mail, I saw it, a crisp, white envelope from Oakwood Meadows. It felt different from their usual monthly invoices. It was thicker, more formal. I placed it on my dining room table, the same table where we had made our hollow promise. For a few minutes, I just stared at it, a cold dread creeping up my spine. My hands trembled as I finally picked it up and carefully tore it open. The words inside were polite, professional, and utterly devastating. It was a final notice. The account was 3 months in arrears. In my desperate scramble to keep things afloat, I had fallen behind. The loan money had run out, and I had been making partial payments, hoping to catch up, but I never could. The facility's policy was clear. If the full balance wasn't paid within 30 days, they would have no choice but to begin the process of discharging my mother from their care. Discharging. The word was a clinical, sterile euphemism for eviction. They would kick my sick, vulnerable mother out. The image of her, confused and frightened, being forced to leave the only stable home she knew, flashed in my mind. Where would she go? I had no way to care for her in my small condo. Other state-funded facilities had horrifying reputations and years-long waiting lists. I sank into a chair, the letter clutched in my hand. The room felt like it was tilting. I couldn't breathe. This was it, the absolute end of the line. I had sacrificed everything, my savings, my retirement, my peace of mind, and it still wasn't enough. My siblings had bled me dry, and in the end, I had failed anyway. I felt a surge of pure, unadulterated rage, so intense it made me dizzy. It was a rage directed at Ethan and Sophia, at their selfishness, their lies, their casual cruelty. They had posted smiling vacation photos while I was applying for loans. They had bought new cars while I was selling off my future. And now, their actions were going to put our mother on the street. I sat there at the table for a long time, the letter lying in front of me. The anger slowly subsided, replaced by a strange, chilling calm. The desperation and panic were gone. The tears I thought would come never did. In their place, something else was crystallizing in my mind. A cold, hard resolve. They had pushed me to the edge. They had left me with nothing to lose. They thought I would just absorb the blow, that I would break, that I would find some other way to fix the problem they had created. They were wrong. The game was over. My role as the quiet, responsible sister who cleaned up their messes had just expired. If they wanted a war, I would give them one. I picked up the letter, my hand no longer shaking. This piece of paper wasn't just a final notice. It was a declaration of war. And I was finally ready to fight back. For the first time in over a year, I slept soundly. The rage had burned away the anxiety, leaving behind a cold, clear sense of purpose. The next morning, I called in sick to work, something I almost never did. My project timelines and deliverables seemed trivial compared to the mission I now had. My first step wasn't to call my siblings and scream at them. That would be a waste of breath. My first step was to gather intelligence. I was a project manager. My entire career was built on research, data analysis, and identifying the truth behind the excuses. I was about to apply my professional skills to my personal life with a vengeance. I started with what I knew, which was their very public, very curated online lives. I opened my laptop and began with Sophia. Her boutique's website was a slick, professional affair, full of glowing testimonials and beautifully photographed products. She had a blog section where she wrote about being a girl boss and the challenges of entrepreneurship. One recent post was titled "Navigating Tough Times." In it, she wrote vaguely about economic headwinds and the importance of staying resilient. It was the perfect cover story for her supposed financial struggles. But social media told a different story. I went beyond her public profiles, using search functions to find her tagged photos. There she was, at a charity gala, the event's photographer having snapped a picture of her with a group of other local business owners. The caption listed the sponsors. I looked up the gala. Tables cost thousands of dollars. A few weeks prior, she was tagged in photos from a bachelorette party in Miami, a weekend of yachts and exclusive clubs. I scrolled through her friends' profiles, finding more evidence. The artisanal leather trip to Italy wasn't a solo business trip. It was a 2-week vacation with her boyfriend, staying at luxury hotels. I started taking screenshots, saving links, and organizing everything into a folder on my desktop labeled The Facade. Every post about a new designer bag, every restaurant receipt visible in a foodie photo, every background detail that hinted at her true spending, it all went into the folder. I found her business registration online through the state's public records portal. Her boutique was registered as an LLC. It didn't give me her revenue, but it was another piece of the puzzle. The narrative of a struggling artist was a complete fabrication. She wasn't just getting by, she was thriving, and she was funding her lavish lifestyle with the money that should have gone to our mother's care. Next, I turned my attention to Ethan. His online presence was more professional but no less revealing. He was on LinkedIn, of course, with a profile that screamed success. He listed himself as the CEO of Vance Development Group. I searched for the company. It was a legitimate business with a portfolio of small to mid-sized commercial and residential projects. Public property records were my next stop. I searched for properties owned by him and his LLC. The custom home he was building in the gated community was there, the deed registered to him and his wife. The estimated value was staggering. I then found records of his recent real estate transactions. He hadn't just been building, he'd been flipping properties, buying, renovating, and selling for significant profit. In the last 6 months alone, the same 6 months he'd been telling me he had cash flow issues. He had sold 2 properties for a combined profit that would have covered Mom's nursing home costs for the next decade. The anger I felt was sharp and precise. He hadn't been tight on cash. He had simply decided that his wealth was more important than his mother's welfare. Paying his share was an inconvenience, a line item he chose to cut from his budget so he could maximize his profits and build his McMansion. The deepest wound came when I stumbled upon a local business journal article from 3 months prior. It was a feature on up-and-coming real estate developers. There was a big, glossy photo of Ethan smiling confidently in front of one of his construction sites. The article quoted him extensively. One line made me physically recoil from the screen. He spoke about his motivations, saying, "For me, it's all about legacy. It's about building something that lasts, something that provides security for my family. My family is the most important thing in the world to me." The hypocrisy was so profound, it was almost comical. He was preaching about family security while actively jeopardizing the security of his own mother. He was building a legacy on a foundation of lies and neglect. I saved a PDF of the article to my folder. By the end of the day, I had a comprehensive dossier on both of them. I had dates, photos, public records, and their own words, all painting a clear picture of deceit. They weren't struggling. They were selfish. They hadn't fallen on hard times. They had actively chosen to redirect their responsibilities onto me. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the profound disrespect, the utter lack of character they had shown. They had not only abandoned their mother financially, but they had also insulted my intelligence by expecting me to believe their pathetic, transparent lies. My next step was to visit Oakwood Meadows, but this time it wasn't to see my mother. I made an appointment with Mr. Evans. I walked in, holding the final notice. My shame from our last conversation was gone, replaced by a firm resolve. I needed an ally, and I was hoping he could be one. I laid out the situation for him, not the emotional drama, but the facts. I told him I was the sole person paying, that my siblings had defaulted on our family agreement, and that I was exploring my options. He listened patiently, his expression shifting from professional concern to genuine empathy. "Riley, I am so sorry you're carrying this all on your own," he said, his voice soft. "It's a situation we see more often than you'd think. Families make promises, and then life gets in the way." He looked at the notice in my hand. "Legally, the facility's contract is with the resident's primary guarantor, which is you, but that doesn't mean you're out of options." He couldn't give legal advice, but he could give me information. He explained the concept of filial responsibility laws. They varied by state, but in ours, these laws held that adult children were financially responsible for the care of their indigent parents. If Mom's assets were depleted and she was unable to pay, the care provider could legally pursue her children for the cost of her care. A spark of hope ignited within me. So, they could be held accountable. "Potentially," he confirmed. "It's not a simple process, but it's a legal avenue. You would need to speak with an attorney who specializes in elder law. They could tell you exactly what your rights and your siblings' obligations are." He printed out a list of local elder law attorneys for me. I walked out of Oakwood Meadows feeling like I had a weapon for the first time. My dossier of their lies was the ammunition. The law was the weapon. The path forward was no longer a dark, desperate tunnel. It was a clearly defined battle plan. The investigation phase was complete. Now, it was time to plan my attack. Armed with my folder of evidence and the list from Mr. Evans, I spent the next 2 days vetting elder law attorneys. I found one with a reputation for being a shark, a woman named Carla Hayes who had stellar reviews and a no-nonsense approach. I booked a consultation for that Friday. Walking into her office felt like crossing a threshold. It was organized, professional, and exuded an air of quiet competence that I found immensely reassuring. Carla was in her 50s, with sharp eyes and a direct manner that cut straight to the point. I didn't waste her time with emotional appeals. I laid out the facts just as I had for Mr. Evans, but this time, I opened my laptop and walked her through the facade folder. I showed her the social media posts, the property records for Ethan's new house and his profitable flips, the article where he pontificated about the importance of family, and Sophia's lavish spending. I then showed her the simple, handwritten agreement we had all signed at my dining table. Finally, I presented the final notice from Oakwood Meadows. She listened intently, her expression unreadable. She scrolled through the evidence, occasionally nodding to herself. When I was finished, she leaned back in her chair and looked at me. "Your siblings are playing a very dangerous game," she said, her voice calm and even. "They're betting on your love for your mother outweighing your willingness to create conflict. They assume you will continue to sacrifice yourself to protect her. It's a classic case of financial elder abuse, with you as the proxy victim." Hearing my situation described in such stark, legal terms was validating. I wasn't just in a family squabble. I was the victim of a legitimate form of abuse. "So what can we do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "We have a few angles of attack," Carla explained, ticking them off on her fingers. "First, the agreement you all signed. While not drafted by a lawyer, it is a written contract demonstrating intent. We can argue it's a valid family contract that they have breached. It's not a slam dunk, but it's a strong piece of evidence. Second," she continued, and more powerfully, is the filial responsibility law in this state. It's robust. Since your mother's assets are depleted and she cannot cover her own costs, the law allows care providers to seek reimbursement from her adult children. The key is that they look at the children's ability to pay. Your evidence, she gestured to my laptop, beautifully establishes their ability to pay. You've done most of the legwork already. A plan began to form in my mind, but Carla was already a step ahead. "Here's how I suggest we proceed," she said, leaning forward. "We won't go in with guns blazing just yet. A formal lawsuit is our last resort. Our first move will be a carefully crafted demand letter. It will be sent from my office to both Ethan and Sophia." She outlined the strategy. The letter would state 3 things in clear, unequivocal legal terms. First, it would detail their breach of the family contract. Second, it would inform them of their legal obligations under the state's filial responsibility statute. Third, and most importantly, it would present them with a choice. "The choice is this," Carla said, her eyes glinting. "Option A, they immediately pay their arrears in full. Your evidence file will be referenced as proof of their financial capacity, and sign a new, legally binding contract committing to their 1/3 share of all future payments. In this scenario, you graciously agree not to pursue further legal action." "And option B?" I asked, my heart starting to pound. "Option B is the consequences," she said. "If they refuse or fail to comply within 10 business days, we will immediately file a lawsuit against them for breach of contract and for their share of the costs. Furthermore, I will forward my entire file, including your meticulously gathered evidence of their financial status, to the legal department at Oakwood Meadows. I will inform them that you have been covering the costs alone and are no longer able to do so, and that under the filial responsibility law, they have 2 other children with significant assets who they can, and should, pursue for the entire outstanding balance and all future costs. Once the nursing home's lawyers get involved, it gets very expensive and very public for them. It was brilliant. It wasn't just me threatening them. It was the looming threat of the large, corporate entity of Oakwood Meadows coming after them. Ethan, with his public image as a successful developer, and Sophia, with her carefully curated girl boss brand, would be terrified of a public lawsuit from a nursing home. It would destroy their reputations. This gives them an out, Carla concluded. It allows them to save face. They can comply with our demands, and this all stays within the family, albeit with a new, unbreakable legal framework. Or they can defy us and face public humiliation and a much costlier legal battle. We are putting the choice entirely in their hands. I felt a wave of relief so powerful it almost made me cry. For the first time, I wasn't the one who was trapped. They were. I had backed them into a corner, using the law, the facts, and their own egos as the walls. "Let's do it," I said, my voice firm. "Draft the letters." Over the next few days, Carla and I worked together to refine the letters. She was impressed with my organized evidence, which she attached as exhibits. We included the signed family agreement, key property records for Ethan, and screenshots of Sophia's most egregious spending, juxtaposed with the dates of her missed payments. The final package was a masterclass in legal pressure. When the letters were ready, Carla sent them via certified mail, requiring a signature upon delivery. I knew the exact moment they would each receive their copy. All I had to do was wait for the storm to break. The power of a paper trail, I realized, was that it was undeniable. It was the truth, printed in black and white, and it was about to land on their doorsteps like a ticking bomb. The quiet, responsible sister was done. The strategic, prepared plaintiff D just taken the field. The silence after the letters were delivered was deafening. I could track the certified mail online, and I knew Ethan had signed for his at 10:15 a.m. on a Wednesday. Sophia signed for hers at 1:30 p.m. the same day. For the next 48 hours, there was nothing. No angry phone calls, no accusatory texts. It was an unnerving quiet, the kind of stillness that comes before a hurricane. I knew they must be communicating with each other, scrambling to formulate a response. The first to break was Sophia. She didn't call me. She sent a long, rambling text message on Friday evening. It was a masterwork of manipulation, swinging wildly from feigned hurt to passive-aggressive threats. "I cannot believe you would do this, Riley," it began. "To send a lawyer after your own sister, after everything we've been through? I told you I was having a hard time. My business is fragile. This kind of stress could ruin me. Do you want that on your conscience? To destroy my dream because you're impatient? I always intended to pay you back. This is so cruel and unnecessary." I read the message, and for the first time, her words had no effect on me. The crocodile tears and victimhood act were useless against the cold, hard facts. I didn't reply. My lawyer had instructed me to have no direct contact. All communication was to go through her. Ethan's response came the next morning. It was a phone call, not to me, but to Carla. He tried to play the big shot, the powerful businessman who could swat away this minor annoyance. According to Carla, who called me immediately after, he was blustering and arrogant. "He tried to intimidate me," Carla said, a note of amusement in her voice. "He said this was a private family matter and that I had no business interfering. He called your evidence a gross invasion of his privacy and threatened to sue for harassment." "What did you say?" I asked, my stomach in a knot. "I told him that his privacy ended when his actions risked his mother's well-being and breached a contract with his sister," Carla replied coolly. "I informed him that all the evidence I had was obtained from public records and their own social media posts. Then I very calmly reminded him that the 10-day clock was ticking and that Oakwood Meadows' legal team was, I was sure, very interested in his recent property sales. The line went very quiet after that. The blustering was just a front. They were scared. They knew I had them cornered. The final act needed to be in person. On day 7 of the 10-day notice period, I received a joint email from both of them, sent to my attorney. They requested a meeting, Me, them, and Carla. They wanted to resolve this. We agreed to meet at Carla's office, a neutral territory where I would have the upper hand. I walked in feeling a sense of calm I hadn't felt in years. I was no longer the pleading, desperate little sister. I was the one holding all the cards. They were already there, sitting on the plush leather couch opposite Carla's desk. They looked smaller, less confident than I had ever seen them. Ethan's expensive suit seemed to hang on him, his usual swagger completely gone. Sophia was pale, her eyes red-rimmed, stripped of her usual glamorous makeup. "Thank you for coming," Carla began, her tone all business. "My client and I are here to discuss your response to my letter dated October 5th. As you know, you have 3 days left to comply." Ethan cleared his throat. "Look, Riley," he started, turning to me, ignoring Carla. "This has all been a huge misunderstanding." Carla cut him off instantly. "Please address your comments to me, Mr. Vance. Your sister will not be negotiating with you directly." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he turned back to Carla. "Fine. This whole situation has been blown out of proportion. We had a temporary cash flow problem." A cash flow problem that coincided with the purchase of a luxury vehicle, multiple property flips, and the construction of a new home? Carla interjected, her voice like ice. She gestured to the file on her desk. "And Ms. Vance, was your fragile business also suffering when you took a 2-week European vacation and attended a $1,000-a-plate charity gala?" Sophia flinched as if struck. The direct, factual confrontation left them with no room to maneuver. Their usual tactics, emotional manipulation from Sophia, blustering denial from Ethan, were useless against the paper trail. "What do you want, Riley?" Ethan finally asked, his voice cracking with desperation. It was the first time he had sounded genuinely defeated. I let the question hang in the air for a moment before I answered, my voice steady and clear. "I want what we all agreed to at my dining room table. Nothing more, nothing less. I want you to honor the promise we made to our mother." Carla took over. "The terms are not negotiable," she stated plainly. "By the end of the 10-day period, a wire transfer must be made to my firm's TR. Must account for the full amount of the arrears, which is $94,000, covering your combined missed payments for the last 14 months. We will then disperse the funds to Oakwood Meadows, bringing the account current. You will also sign the new payment agreement, making you legally responsible for your 1/3 share moving forward. If you do these things, the matter is closed. If you do not, we file the lawsuit on day 11, and I make my call to Oakwood Meadows." They sat in stunned silence. The exact number, laid out so starkly, was a shock to them. They had never bothered to calculate the debt they had offloaded onto me. They just knew I would handle it. "94,000, Sophia whispered, her face ashen. "I don't have that kind of money just sitting around." "Then I suggest you find it," Carla said flatly. "Sell a watch, postpone your next vacation. Your lifestyle is no longer my client's concern." She then looked at Ethan. "And you, Mr. Vance, I've seen the public records on your last property sale. We both know you can cover the entire amount without blinking. How you choose to settle the debt between the two of you is your business, but the full amount will be paid." There was nothing left for them to say. They had no excuses, no leverage, no escape route. The confrontation wasn't the screaming match I had once imagined. It was a quiet, clinical execution of facts. They were trapped by their own greed and lies, and they knew it. "Fine," Ethan finally muttered, slumping in his seat. "You'll have the money." Sophia just nodded, unable to speak, tears finally streaming down her face. But this time, I knew they weren't for show. They were the real, bitter tears of someone who had finally been forced to face the consequences of their actions. The debt they had tried to cancel was now due, and the bill had finally come for them to pay. On the 10th and final day, at 3:47 p.m., I received an email from Carla. It contained a single attachment, a confirmation receipt. A wire transfer for the full $94,000 had arrived in her firm's trust account. A few hours later, a second email arrived with scanned copies of the new payment agreement, signed by both Ethan and Sophia and notarized. I stared at the screen, and a feeling I hadn't experienced in years washed over me: peace. It wasn't a triumphant, celebratory feeling. It was a quiet, profound sense of release. The weight that had been crushing my chest for so long had finally been lifted. The debt was paid. The battle was over. Carla handled the rest. She paid the outstanding balance to Oakwood Meadows, bringing Mom's account into good standing. She also sent a letter to Mr. Evans, explaining that a new legally binding payment structure was in place with all 3 siblings to ensure this would never happen again. The threat of my mother losing her home was gone. My relationship with my siblings, however, was shattered beyond repair. They didn't speak to me, and I made no effort to reach out. The family I thought we were had been an illusion, and I was done pretending. The first of the following month came, and like magic, 2 transfers appeared in the joint account alongside mine. The new agreement, with its threat of immediate legal action for any missed payment, worked perfectly. Their lives changed. Sophia's online boutique posts became less about luxury and more about sales and promotions. I heard through a cousin that she had to sell her car. Ethan put the construction of his massive new house on hold indefinitely. The facade they had worked so hard to maintain had crumbled, not publicly, but privately. They had the money, but not without consequence. They were forced to live within their actual means, not the fantasy life they had been funding with my sacrifice. They also stopped visiting Mom entirely. I think they were too ashamed to face me, and perhaps too ashamed to face her, even in her non-lucid state. It was sad, but I realized it was also for the best. Her final years should be filled with peace, not the tension and dishonesty they brought with them. With the financial burden gone, I was able to begin rebuilding my own life. I paid off the high-interest loan I had taken out. I started replenishing my savings and investing in my retirement again. It would take years to get back to where I was, but for the first time, the future looked bright instead of terrifying. I even booked the vacation I had been forced to cancel, a trip to a quiet beach where I planned to do nothing but read and listen to the ocean. My visits with Mom changed, too. They were no longer tinged with the desperation and anxiety that had haunted me for so long. I could just be with her. I would sit in the garden at Oakwood Meadows, holding her hand, and tell her about my week. I'd show her pictures of my cat and play her the old songs she used to love. Most of the time, she would just smile, her eyes distant. But one afternoon, as we were sitting there, a familiar Glenn Miller song playing softly from a speaker, she turned to me. Her eyes were clear, and for a fleeting moment, she was completely there. She squeezed my hand. "Riley," she said, her voice a soft, raspy whisper, "you're a good daughter." Tears welled in my eyes. I squeezed her hand back, unable to speak. The moment passed as quickly as it came, and she drifted away again into the fog of her illness. But it was enough. It was everything. The vow our family had made was broken, but I had made a new one to myself, that I would protect my mother and I would protect myself. I had honored them both. The cost had been immense, but sitting there, with the sun on my face and my mother beside me, I knew that the peace I felt was real. It was a peace that I had fought for, a peace that I had earned, a peace that was, finally, paid in full.